Early fantasy football sleepers, these are all guys that you can draft in double-digit rounds. If you want a deeper sleeper video, let me know in the comments. I have separated this video into a two-part series because I lack self-control and the video got a little too long. So this version will be covering running backs and quarterbacks. We will start off with running backs because let's be honest, is there anything better in fantasy football than hitting on a good sleeper running back? We'll start off here with Emanuel Wilson. This might be the most critical player on this list, the most critical sleeper maybe, because anyone talking about Zach Charbonnet being ready at the beginning of the season is speaking from an extremely optimistic perspective. The odds are slim that he is ready to go. And you also have to bear in mind that this is a team looking to repeat their Super Bowl victory, and they know they have all the tools to get there without forcing Zach Charbonnet to come back early. If you are Seattle, are you really pressing his recovery timeline, or are you taking a cautious approach that ensures that he is ready specifically for a playoff run because you know that's where you're heading? I would choose the latter, especially when I have just made an investment into a first-round running back that can hold me over until we get to that point. I've talked about Seattle's run volume a lot this offseason. Jadarian Price physically cannot handle all that volume. It's not possible. Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker combined for over 400 carries last season. Someone else has to carry the ball. The Seahawks had 507 rush attempts, third most in the league. And when you account for the fact that the teams ahead of them have running quarterbacks, the Bills and the Giants, it makes it even more obvious that we are factually getting a running back not named Charbonnet or Price that will have a significant workload for a portion of the season. So you then have to ask yourself, who would that role belong to? George Holani or the newly signed Emanuel Wilson, a big three-down capable back who has experience, very good experience, in handling a fill-in workload that he showcased very well in relief of Josh Jacobs previously. I would put my money very aggressively on Wilson being able to beat out Holani. So if I am bumping Jadarian Price and Emanuel Wilson next to each other, I, again, would put my money on Price being the 2026 version of Kenneth Walker and Wilson being the 2026 fill-in for Zach Charbonnet until he's healthy. For a very minimal price that you have to pay for Wilson, yeah, I will take that early season production and run with it. Because if that Price Wilson 1-2 punch hits right away, they are not rushing Zach Charbonnet back. And then that early season production turns into maybe the majority of the fantasy season. And you can say, nah, Tara, Sharp will be back sooner rather than later. That's fine, right? Because it's a no-risk bet. It's not a big deal. You are drafting Wilson extremely late. And unlike other late-round dart throws where you have to wait a month to see if it works out, you will know immediately in week one if this pick has value or not. Now, this is not an indictment on Amari Hampton. I've got no beef with him. No issue. This is just a possibility sleeper pick, so go with me on it. It is late-round optimism. Hampton is a three-down back. He is 220, and he can be very productive after the catch. There's no issue there. And what we saw of him last season in games where he had volume was very encouraging. And we've got a new offensive concept with Mike McDaniel. Getting away from Greg Roman is great for everybody. So no problem here. But we have seen the lust in Mike McDaniel's eyes when he sees a tiny little speed demon. And I would not be shocked if we see meaningful usage from Keaton Mitchell as a change of pace back because Mike McDaniel is feeling nostalgic for Devon Achane. And we do know two very specific things about Keaton Mitchell. One, he can't stay on the field. Ugh. But two, when he does stay on the field, he will hit a home run real quick, right? So it doesn't take a lot for him to become fantasy relevant, right? If he were to actually stay on the field, right? Now, I don't want to dismiss Kamani Vidal because he did fill in very admirably for Hampton when he was hurt last season. And behind Achane last season, between Ollie Gordon and Jalen Wright, Mike McDaniel really couldn't make up his mind for preference. So Vidal and Mitchell will both have the opportunity to compete as change of pace backs, right? I just like Keaton Mitchell better. Looking at Vidal as more of a direct handcuff makes sense because of his size and ability to carry 20 plus carries a game. We know that, right? But when it comes to Keaton Mitchell, look at him as the most likely candidate to see the field alongside Amari Hampton as a change of pace back. And he would likely retain that specific role, even if there were an injury as well. Sadly, you guys know I'm very pro Kenneth Gainwell, but since Todd Bowles had the audacity to come out and admit some tough truths about the vagueness of when we will actually see Bucky Irving on the field, Kenneth Gainwell is no longer a bargain. Now, I will be targeting him. Trust that, right? But I don't think that he really qualifies as a sleeper, right? Because he is steadily rising in the rankings, but Sean Tucker does. For a man who is heading into the 4th year of his NFL career and has barely had 150 carries, he has given us the most random 100-plus multi-touchdown games ever, right? Very, very interesting. The man can run. Now, Sean Tucker did catch passes in college, so it's not as if he has stone hands, but Tampa Bay just really doesn't like to utilize him in that way. They love what he does at the goal line. They love him in short yardage situations, and if they have to use him for early down work, they have no problem doing it, right? But again, we are not looking for receptions here. We're looking at Sean Tucker for what he is. He's touchdowns. Yay! He is very effective at the goal line. And they, again, clearly trust him there. And in the back half of the season, when Bucky Irving did return to health and was seeing a very normal, hefty workload, they were pulling Bucky at the goal line and putting in Tucker, who had 3 straight games with touchdowns, and Bucky had none. Now, Tucker isn't usable, obviously, when Bucky is healthy, right? Because we don't want to rely on 1 touchdown on like 3 carries, right? Again, sniping at the goal line just hurts Bucky. It isn't enough to warrant us actually putting Tucker into our fantasy lineups. But where things get interesting is that Bucky is dealing with this injury issue, right? And Sean Tucker is technically the handcuff, right? Because both running backs would be used. Both he and Gainwell would be used. Gainwell would have the higher upside because he would get carries on the ground and obviously does have the higher receiving upside. But Tucker would become a viable fantasy asset. So let's just keep this in mind. Target Tucker right now in best ball, right? And then we're going to have to see when it comes to redraft where Bucky is at and as we get closer to this timeline in training camp, because I'm very worried and I don't trust the timelines regarding Bucky or from Tampa Bay in general after the way that we were burned last season. It is entirely possible that something is very sideways here. And you just want to be prepared to make that move from a draft perspective. Now, Jonathon Brooks I saved for last, not because he's the lowest ranked out of this group, obviously, but because we've talked about him a lot already this offseason, ad nauseum, really. Brooks has about as clean of a path to being an RB1 as you can get as a backup because it will not actually take an injury for him to see work on the field. The Panthers happily give touches to additional backs, and they have proven this through multiple lead back changes that they have zero loyalty at running back. And if Brooks is healthy, logically he will get a shot to play because the Panthers at the very least will want to see him in actual in-game action and see what they have in him. And we've already had the Panthers this offseason talking about utilizing him a lot, potentially specifically as a pass catcher. So he will get the opportunity to see the field. The other running backs, again, it's literally just, it's Chuba that's his competition. It is Chuba Hubbard as the starter, and can Brooks break in, steal some of that workload, and showcase better and earn the starting role there. The other backs are Trevor Etienne, who's used sparingly, does not profile as a lead back, A.J. Dillon, well past his prime. So again, Brooks just has to be more impressive than Chuba Hubbard. So it's a very clean path, and no insult to Hubbard. He has been very reliable. But we have witnessed him lose his job to Rico Dowdle, right? He got it back-ish, like kind of, right? But at the end of the day, you already lost it. And you're not the first one to lose it. So again, the Panthers have no loyalty, and they will pull the trigger real quick at all positions, really, if they want to make a change. And that's a great thing for us in redraft, right? Because that also means that his ADP will never rise higher than an RB3 because in no way, shape, or form should we trust the Panthers or should we trust this man specifically to stay on the field and make it through a season. So again, his ADP is naturally going to be capped. There's not a ton of risk in drafting him. I find it hard to believe he would ever crack into realistically being one of the top 36 backs. That would be pushing it there. So he's a good value pick. A what if, maybe it can work out. And if he does manage to push Chuba out, he would definitely be a winner from a draft perspective, specifically because he could be 3 down with the receiving upside. Now for quarterbacks, Daniel Jones was playing so well in the first half of last season, he had people calling for MVP consideration, and then he suffered a fracture. The production immediately dipped. He tried to play through it. He probably shouldn't have, and then the Achilles tear, unfortunately. I talked a lot about how the Colts' schedule last season was very tilted, but there were several early season difficult defensive matchups where Jones put up numbers. He had over 300 passing yards against Denver. He handled the Chargers very well. And yeah, there were instances where interceptions got the best of him, right? He was Daniel Jones after all. But he still threw for volume and he had the benefit of the ability to get touchdowns on the ground as well. His game may never win a Super Bowl, but it works from a fantasy perspective, so I like it. And the Colts have a much more favorable schedule this season, so I am willing to go back to Daniel Jones. Yay, he's been cleared and he is participating in OTAs. That is fantastic news. So it is time that we look at him as a fantasy target. He is the starting quarterback, and he has got an extremely well-rounded group of playmakers. Now, coming off of an Achilles injury, obviously does have its challenges, but it's good to see him so far ahead of schedule. And the challenges are often more related to getting the ball downfield, comfort of being able to push off aggressively on that leg. But the good thing for Daniel Jones is that he is not reliant exclusively on the deep ball to Alec Pierce. Tyler Warren and Josh Downs can be very productive in the short to intermediate area. So if he has to heavily rely on shorter passes until he gets more comfortable, shouldn't be a problem, right? Because the talent is there. And we don't have to make a significant investment into him. Realistically, we're looking at him at really the max he could go up to is like QB 20. He is an excellent super flex target. And I would actually target him in a one quarterback deep league as well because his upside is so high. You could just pair him with a safer option like Jared Goff and call it a day. And Malik Willis, look, having no wide receiver one is crazy, weird, unfair, kind of stupid. In Miami's schedule is extremely stupid. So be fully aware that this can absolutely turn into a Justin Fields situation where you got starter money, but you don't get starter games because the season went sideways real quick. And Justin Fields had Garrett Wilson. Malik is on an island. I was not joking when I said I genuinely believe that the target leader will be Devon Achane by far. But at least the lack of an addition at receiver did make Willis fall back to a more realistic level because we were looking at him getting pushed up well above guys like Bo Nix early in the offseason. That ADP was rising to a level I was just uncomfortable with, not going to lie. And now we are far back to a more reasonable low-end QB2 ranking. And that's an acceptable place to take that risk and draft him, right? Because it's not going to kill your fantasy season. And he does offer extreme rushing upside. Obviously, our sample size is small on Willis, right? But in 2 starts in 2024, he had 6 carries in each game, 41 yards in one of those games, 73 yards and a touchdown in the other. In 2025, he had 2 games where he started more than 50 or not started, but he played more than 50% of snaps last season. And he had a total of 19 carries for over 100 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns in literally less than 2 total games. The man's rushing upside is through the roof. He could throw for 112 yards and rush for so much that he gives you a strong QB1 performance, right? Clearly, we have not seen him throw for high volume, but he was very efficient in Green Bay. Now, obviously, he had actual weapons in Green Bay, but he was definitely very well developed and utilized by Matt LaFleur. So, Malik Willis has been trained up in the Kyle Shanahan tree. He remains in the Kyle Shanahan tree in Miami, so we should see the continued concept of efficiency in putting Malik Willis into low-risk scenarios. Again, I would not be shocked if we continue to see 6 to 10 carries a game from him every single week because he is running for his life with that schedule and only one weapon in sight. So it might not be fun for him. It definitely won't be fun for him. But from a fantasy perspective, if he stays on the field, yeah, he probably will put up numbers. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can find me across all social media platforms at It's Tara Time. I am also live every Wednesday on YouTube at 8 p.m. EST, so make sure that you stop by and chat. It is always a good time. You can ask me any questions that you want. You can also subscribe to my Substack if you want to support me another way. And if you are looking for new fantasy football tools in 2026, look at Player Profiler. You can use my promo code TARA for 25% off at Player Profiler.